And so if I were to categorize some of the lessons, some of the learnings that I've felt from those first early days to now, I'll share some of those with you. And the first one is that risk takers say no to the status quo. And so a good example of that is Ted Turner. Ted Turner owns everything, TBS, TNT, Turner Classic Movies. But he's got a plaque on his desk. Does anybody know what the plaque says? Has anybody heard that story? Ted Turner plaque on his desk? Plaque on his desk says, if it's not broken, break it. Break it. If it's not broken, break it. Which is quite the opposite of what we normally think about in business, right? But it's really, I think, key to the survival of business. Because I started Wharton not thinking about being an entrepreneur. I wrote a marketing plan not thinking about taking it out as running my own business. But you reach that point where you're so passionate about it and you want to challenge the status quo that you make that trade. Another good example of that, if you look back to history's top 10 entrepreneurs, is Ray Kroc. You're familiar with the Ray Kroc story? I mean, look what he did in inventing fast food. He didn't create the hamburger, but what he did is he was selling milkshake machines. Selling milkshake machines. He goes into a diner. They've got 400 items on the menu, and he says 90% of these people buy a what? Hamburger. So what does he do? He creates a concept around a limited menu, speedy services, women who probably like to get kids in and out fast, give them their hamburger. And look what's happened since then. Just an amazing story of challenging. He didn't invent the diner. He didn't invent the hamburger. He challenged the status quo of how it was being delivered. The second one is that leaders believe in their ideas when others don't. So here's my original idea. My original idea was to control and manage the cost of physical medicine services through utilization, not unit cost. Sounds kind of simple.
Kind of a rebel.
I was a rebel at the time.
Yeah.
In 1994, people hadn't thought about it. They do now, but they hadn't thought about that back in 1995. So it's interesting, I went to my boss and present this marketing idea, and he said, won't make any money on it. Went to my entrepreneurship professor, wrote about it as a paradigm shift in changing the way people look at controlling healthcare costs, particularly in physical medicine. And he said, interesting idea, but you got a chicken and an egg problem and you'll never get it off the ground. He gave me a P-. Now at Wharton, that's one step up from failure. So P- means if you lost, the next thing was not success at Wharton. But he was right about one thing. I mean, I think that clearly leveraging, when you play sort of the middle market and leveraging the chicken and the egg was a significant issue for us. But perseverance and belief in your idea, we're able to overcome that.
Is the professor still there?
No. It's interesting. I go down to Penn about once a year, and I speak at the entrepreneurship class. And there's a new professor who's just done a fabulous job building this program. But the first couple of years, you go down there and you tell them that story. You have to, be careful because it certainly isn't any reflection of Wharton. But I think it's just realizing that it's not just the idea, but it's about the people in the market too. And that's something that may not always be reflected in a grade. But I do enjoy my time in there. The third is that risk takers and leaders rely on their intuition. And that particularly is true, I think, for women. Your IQ is important, but by God, you make a lot of decisions off your EQ, not your IQ. And women, I think, are particularly good at that. And so, I have what I call sort of the 75% rule. And the 75, some of you are shaking your head, they get it already, is that the 75% rule, simply states that most decisions can be made once 75% of the information is in. And if you spend too much time chasing the last 25%, if you don't think it's going to alter your decision, go with it once you've got your 75% in. Because a lot of good decisions, frankly, don't get made. They just don't get made because you can't. People have to feel like they've got to get to 100, and they just don't get there. When if you look back, think about how many decisions you could have made at the